In the dim candlelight of a Paris cellar in 1623, a mother whispered a prayer over a mound of fresh earth, the earth beneath which her own children still breathed. She claimed she was saving them from sin. This is the true story of a woman whose faith consumed her sanity, whose diary was banned for nearly 300 years, and whose final words still echo through the vaults of Paris. Paris in the early 17th century was not the city of romance we imagine today. The air reeked of smoke and rot, the cobblestones were slick with filth, and superstition clung to every whisper. The plague had visited only years earlier, and religious hysteria ruled every street corner. The church was absolute. To doubt was to risk damnation. In this city, in a narrow alley off Rue Saint-Honoré, lived a woman named Marguerite Delacroix, a widow, a mother of 3, and by all accounts, a devout Christian. Her neighbors described her as quiet, gentle, always seen with a rosary in hand. But behind her gentle eyes, something darker stirred, something born from loneliness, fear, and an unshakable belief that the devil walked among them. Before her tragedy, Marguerite was simply another face in the crowd. Her husband, a candlemaker, had died of fever, leaving her with 3 small children and an empty shop. The priests told her that suffering was a test, a holy trial, and Marguerite listened. She began spending long nights in prayer, fasting until her lips turned pale. Neighbors heard her murmuring through the walls, prayers that became wails, and wails that turned into conversations with something unseen. "He speaks to me," she once wrote in her journal, "a voice so pure it burns." But who was speaking to her? God, or something that only wore his voice? It began with small sacrifices, bread, coins, strands of hair, gifts she left at the foot of her candlelit altar. Then came the night visions. Angels with eyes like fire, whispering that the world was corrupted beyond redemption. "Save them before the devil takes them," one voice commanded. She believed it. She had to. Her eldest daughter, Anne, only 6 years old, had begun to hum songs from the street performers, songs the priest said were sinful. Her youngest had stolen a crust of bread from the market. To Marguerite, these were signs. The infection of sin had entered her home. On a freezing night in February 1623, Marguerite gathered her children by the fire and told them they were going to heaven. She dressed them in white. The neighbors heard the lullabies, soft, trembling hymns drifting through the walls. And then, silence. The next morning, a parish boy found her digging in the garden, her hands raw, the earth stained with blood. When questioned, she looked at the priest with calm devotion and said, "They are safe now. I buried them, so they may wake in God's light." The court records describe her as possessed by a holy delusion. But in her diary, discovered years later, she wrote something far stranger. "They smiled as the earth closed over them. I saw the angels waiting." Her trial was swift. The clergy called her a monster, a heretic, a murderer. Yet even as she was condemned, Marguerite prayed. Witnesses said she smiled as the noose was placed around her neck, whispering, "Forgive me, Father, for saving them." But the church was deeply unsettled by her diary. 100 pages of fevered handwriting filled with visions of angels, instructions from voices of light, and a chilling prophecy. Paris will burn for its sins. They banned her writings, sealed them in the archives of Notre-Dame, and erased her from the records. For centuries, her name vanished. Until 1912, when a forgotten bundle of manuscripts was uncovered by a historian cataloging lost documents. Inside was her diary, bound in cracked leather, its ink still legible, its words disturbingly lucid. The historian Charles Fournier described the experience as like reading madness itself, or divine obsession. He published a small translation in 1914, but weeks later, the church demanded it be withdrawn. The diary disappeared again. Some say it was destroyed. Others claim it was hidden once more, deep beneath Paris, in the archives where forbidden texts rest. but fragments survived. Lines copied by hand, whispered among scholars. One entry reads, "The angel came again. He wore the face of my husband. He said I must finish what I began, for more children walk in sin." Another reads, "I hear them beneath the soil. They sing to me." Even centuries later, historians debate whether Marguerite was a victim of postpartum psychosis, religious mania, or genuine belief in divine instruction. But the details of her life and death mirror a larger darkness that consumed Europe. The fear of sin, the obsession with purity, the crushing weight of faith twisted by terror. As one modern historian put it, Marguerite wasn't evil. She was the perfect creation of her time, a woman so devoted to salvation that she damned herself to achieve it. But there's one last mystery. In 1976, a restoration team working in an old Paris crypt found a small box marked only with her initials. MD. Inside were fragments of parchment and a child's rosary, its beads fused together by time. The final words on the parchment were faded but legible. "They sleep still, but they are not gone." The box vanished before it could be examined further, reportedly taken by a church official. To this day, no one knows where it is. So who was Marguerite Delacroix? A murderer, a saint, or a victim of her own faith? Perhaps all three. Her story forces us to confront an uncomfortable truth. In times of fear, faith and madness often share the same face. And when the world convinces us that salvation is worth any price, even innocence becomes expendable. In a way, Marguerite's voice still lives, not in the official histories of Paris, but in whispers, in the fear of mothers who lose too much, love too deeply, and pray too hard. Her home no longer stands, but locals claim that on cold February nights, near Rue Saint-Honoré, you can still hear a woman's voice humming softly beneath the earth, a lullaby for the children she swore she saved. "I buried my children alive," she confessed, "and in their cries I heard angels sing." 3 centuries of silence could not bury her story, because it isn't just hers. It's the story of every faith that demands a sacrifice, and every soul that cannot tell where God ends and madness begins.